What to expect for price in June. In today's video, we're going to be going over a lot of statistics regarding the month of June, as well as the second quarter of the year. I think is the right way to postulate that statement, as we kind of put all of the bigger puzzle pieces together, and of course come at the weekly closure today for CME with the most specific number. That does keep the ball in the Boolaw's court and does, continue to favor that side of the market. Anyways, let's just jump right into this one, starting off with, of course, the information, the statistics of the day. And as you can see right here, I do have all of the Junes of Bitcoin's histories marked off with these vertical bars. Now, we've seen this data before, and if you are not familiar with it, I have it in another window here for some reason, but let me bring it up right over here. And we can look at my spreadsheets. And as you can see, Bitcoin has seen 14 prior Junes. Of those 14, 9 closed positively from open to close. The win percentage in that case, if you're bullish, would be about 64.25%. And the average return for those positive months was 25%, and the average return for the negative months was actually 17%. So let's just play around with those numbers as is, and then we'll go into some more deeper data. But first things first, if Bitcoin were to play out about a 25%-ish move from kind of where we're at right now, do we expect a big price action day? I mean, perhaps it is a Friday. It's a major expiration for options, although I expect that most of those moves have already been made, but it is the last day of the month. So we're going to make an assumption here, which could change things. And again, we'll go over the very specific number later on in this video as to what keeps, the upside probably, a lot more probabilistically likely. But I'm going to just assume Bitcoin's somewhere, going to close somewhere right around here. And if Bitcoin were to add about 24-25% in the month of June, that would put Bitcoin at around $84,000 to $85,000. Okay, fair enough. Let's also take the negative side of that. On the on those negative returning months, losing an average of 17%. So what would that look like potentially to the downside? Again, using current price action as the likely closure, and 17% to the downside would put Bitcoin basically back down around June's low, or sorry, not June, but May's low at $57,000 or so. So likely the range for this next month of June, but this is a very important June, or a very specific June, for a couple of reasons. First is that it is the June, or the second quarter, I should say, that comes after an election. So if we just look at Junes, before an election and after halving, is what I'm trying to say. Those are the two major conditions. The red vertical bars correlate to Junes that happened after Bitcoin's halving and before U.S. elections, because those typically happen, they don't typically, they do happen every, at the same time every year. And as you can see, just looking at these blindly, the red vertical bars, the first two over here, obviously closing, decently positively, and the most recent red bar over here closing negatively. I would add, however, that this was a very, very low volatile month, and essentially opened from 9,400 and closed at 9,100. You might even just say that that's no change, unched, as a ticker would go. But as of right now, that would again put the probabilities in favor of upside. And if we were to just look at those returns, we can see that actually, no, I do not have those returns available right here, because we have more important things to be speaking about. But it would be, it obviously would be on the positive side. Whoops, wrong slot over here. So what we're now going to do is we're going to go into a quarterly chart, and we're going to look at all of the second quarters of Bitcoin's history. Why are we looking at the second quarter? Because, at the end of June wraps up the second quarter, and seeing as we are just about 2/3 of the way through the second quarter, it's probably a good idea to be looking at any sort of historical relationship just to see if it's relevant or not. And again, just blindly looking at this chart, you can see that certainly there was more positive second quarters in Bitcoin's history than negative. If we were to put numbers on that, which I've actually just gone through the calculations myself, there were 10 out of 13 Junes, or sorry, not Junes, but second quarters for Bitcoins, for the Bitcoins that did close positively. Which would be just under 77% strike rate right here. Not bad. By the way, forgot to completely mention, we do have a sale going on right now for all of our programs and services with the code ABUNDANCE. If you look in the description below, we'll get to a little bit more to that later, but I want to get through this data here first. So the second quarter certainly does favor the boo laws, quite a lot. And if we actually just look at this array right here, we can see that two of those negative second quarters actually happened more recently in April of 2021, or the second quarter of 2021, I should say, and the second quarter of 2022. Other than that, pretty much they've always been positive. There was, of course, one other negative second quarter that was back on over here in 2018, but again, more or less unchanged and coming after an all-time high for Bitcoin, a parabolic blow off top, you might call that as well. In fact, obviously, so did the 2021 situation occur there too. So I'd say very unlikely we're seeing the same thing right here. Of course, can always be wrong, about that, but that's why we talk about probabilities and statistics rather than certainties, because, well, that's, in my opinion, a better way to be thinking, just in general, actually, just thinking in terms of probabilities. Anyways, going back into it, I do want to now reference the average returns for those positive and negative second quarters for Bitcoin. On the positive side, I do want to point out that there was a tremendous outlier here on one of the very early iterations for the second quarter for Bitcoin, which did return close to 2,000%. I think it'd be unfair to include that in the results, so I'm actually going to get rid of it right here. And on the positive returning second quarters for Bitcoins, for the Bitcoins, did return an average of actually 54 or almost 54.5%. Kind of a lot, and obviously would be asking a lot for Bitcoin right now, because as of right now, the second quarter is pretty much unchanged, but would certainly obviously favor the upside. Obviously, we do have a few other, bigger returning second quarters, like this one right here and this one right here, but these actually were in more modern times for Bitcoin, so I wouldn't necessarily say that those are outliers. Anyways, and on the negative side, again, keep in mind, we've only seen 3 losing second quarters. 2 of those were tremendously large at about, can you see it? No, you cannot see it. Let me just scroll on over here. At losing 40% and 56% respectively. And in one of those, rather muted at 7.75%. So an average right there would be about 34%. I'm going to lean towards that being unlikely, very unlikely here. Again, first off, Bitcoin is a lot more likely to close the second quarter positively than negatively. And right now, we actually are negative. In fact, it will be negative as long as Bitcoin's below 71,000 bucks. So I'd even go as far to say that, hey, as of right now, the probabilities certainly favor June being an upside month, closing this one out positively. And seeing as we're pretty much unchanged as of right now, that could be, it might very well be a decent month here for the Bitcoins. And of course, on the negative side, we can play around with numbers here. Again, I don't think that this is very likely, but if it were to happen, 30% to the downside, just for reference, would put Bitcoin 48,000 bucks. And if that were to happen, you're going to start to hear me calling for cycle highs and shit like that. Just so we're clear, I don't think that that's likely to happen, but my sort of interpretation of where Bitcoin is currently at in this cycle, that would be quite damning. Anyways, let's move on from there. Let's get into some daily statistics, and then we'll get into the important closures for tonight. And today, Friday, of course, just like the other few days that we've seen throughout this week, more or less a coin flip in terms of whether it's likely to close positively or negatively. At just over 52% of all Fridays beginning in 2024, very specific date right there, have closed positively. But what I'm most interested in right here is the average gain versus the average loss, because these ranges have been very enlightening and very accurate, I would say, especially throughout this past couple of weeks here when Bitcoin's been in these low volatility, tight ranges to, getting the areas of interest. Maybe not perfectly, but close enough. And in this case, if we were to take today's open and add about 2.25% to the upside, that would be a range high of around about 70,000 bucks price per Bitcoins, and to the downside, losing about 2.5% would put Bitcoin around the week's low, or last week's low actually, at 66,500 bucks. So likely the range for today. I don't expect anything tremendously massive for today. So probably just bounce off of that range high or range low, similar to what we've seen throughout this, past week. Anyways, the big number to be aware of today for the Bitcoins, by the way, shout out Trump, man. It's actually really, really crazy what's happening in the US right now. I'm not a humongous or tremendously political person, but seems to me like something's gonna fucking backfire here. Americans love an underdog, and right now Trump is an underdog, it seems like, with everything that's going on. Anyways, I'll get off that topic because we got more important things to be speaking about right here. And the weekly 4 CME, we can see, is right at the median for the weekly HPDR bands, which is having a price of, an area exactly at 68,650. Right now, trading a few $100 above that pivot. But again, it's a long day left to go. 14 hours, 5 minutes, and 57 seconds and counting. As long as Bitcoin's above that number on CME, again, CME does have a premium over spot price action. Have to, at least in the way that I look at things, have to still be favoring overall upside. And that's that. Looking at the daily time frame, do we see anything of particular interest right here as well? Similar to yesterday, although now there's a much more easy way to be judging if Bitcoin is going to actually take the road to the upside sooner rather than later. And that would be with especially a move above yesterday's high or a closure above about $70,000. If you see one of those two things, very likely, yeah, upside is inbound and relevant like now rather than just still waiting on it later. By the same token, to the downside, closure below, what was this? Wednesday's low, kind of same thing as yesterday. Closure below Wednesday's low, send it back down to 64, 63, something like that. But for right now, Bitcoin's still above those pivots. So at least in the way that I look at things, have to be favoring the upside, but probably more sideways, really. And then, of course, we still have this setup over here. There's your code, by the way, if you so desire to get into a service like this. But this one's still very much active. Obviously, it is coming very, very close to the average amount of days played that we would expect for this setup to fire off. But doesn't mean that it can't take a little bit longer. And the more longer that it does take, the more and more natural that it will start to favor the boo laws in this case. But as of right now, we haven't really seen a major change from the entry, whether it be positive or negative, a little bit above, a little bit below. Again, failure condition for this one is just even a price wick below 63,600. And of course, a winning condition for this one, does imply an average move about 15%. In this case, that would be to the upside, which would put Bitcoin where? Is it around 84? What do you know? Around $80,000, give or take a little bit from that number. So again, if you're interested in automated trading or algorithmic trading or just automated execution or automated backtesting, all these good things, which I absolutely love, which you may or may not love as well, you can check out the Krown Quant automation service in the link in the description below. It'll essentially give you access to the script, which allows you to backtest any strategy that you might be considering on TradingView, and then yes, you can actually put that to automated execution through a third-party executor, which is actually quite nice. But I'll have more information on that probably in a video over the weekend. Until then, I think we'll shut things off right there. Big closure for tonight. The big number for me, again, is the weekly CME. As long as Bitcoin's above there, I'm still going to be favoring the upside. It's the same shit as before, just taking its time, being slow. And that is what it is. By the way, the top side of the 38.2 range is pretty much around the same targeted region if this setup plays out over here. So we'll come back to it tomorrow once we get that actual closure, and we'll assess from there. But still, it's it's the same shit as before. I mean, Bitcoin has really just gone sideways. So I can't really change my opinions on things until I get evidence to do so. So yeah, anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. As always, want to wish you the best. Happy Junes out there to the June celebrators. And yeah, we'll end things right there. All right. Take care. Much love, and see you hopefully in an abundant future later.